How will Chris Olave be remembered as an Ohio State Buckeye? Where will the Buckeyes fall in the new college football playoff rankings that come out tonight? And we turn the page looking ahead to Saturday's game against the Wolverines. Here on this Expert Tuesday, Jacob Benge joins me to touch on all that and more in this fun episode of Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, November 23rd in the year 2021, and today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to sonos.com to learn more. Today, we are joined by Jacob Benge. He is the assistant editor of The Lantern. Jacob, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. I meant to ask beforehand, but I'm glad you're back with us here on Locked on Buckeyes.
I'm glad to be back, Jay, as well. Yeah, you did pronounce my name, Jacob Benge. It's definitely interesting when I meet new people and they guess my last name a little bit. I've gotten a little bit of everything in the gamut. So I'm just glad to be back, Jay. I'm ready to talk about this game this weekend.
Yeah, this game, this upcoming weekend, biggest game of the year. We're all looking forward to it. But before we look ahead, let's look back to a couple days ago to what we witnessed in the shoe on Senior Day, where the Buckeyes just annihilated, demolished, whatever you want to describe the Buckeyes' performance on Saturday. And how do you describe what we witnessed? Because I'm at a loss of words, and I know you've written articles. You may have more words than I have.
You know, I guess if I had to sum it up in one word, just domination on all fronts. It was a complete game from Ohio State's offense. As we saw, they put up 500 yards of total offense in the first half. C.J. Stroud tied the single-game record in passing touchdowns in the first half. And then the defense did its thing and only held Michigan State to 7 points. And we were talking about how two Heisman frontrunners were going to meet on the same field, and C.J. Stroud of Ohio State and Kenneth Walker of Michigan State. And Kenneth Walker didn't even lead his team in rushing yards in the game. So he was shut down by the Buckeyes front seven, that defensive line, and then Ohio State just put together one of its most complete games of the season at a time that I thought the Buckeyes needed to, because we're coming down the stretch run and the CFP. There are so many implications as far as Big Ten conference standings go, the CFP. And as we saw, Oregon fell, and so that's another domino to fall in the line to see where the CFP will shake out. So just a complete game from Ohio State on Saturday against the Spartans.
What was it like for you while being there in the stadium watching this performance?
Yeah, it was. You mentioned how it was Senior Day, and so all the students came in, and then they got to see guys like Chris Olave, Thayer Munford run on and off the field for the last time. And so I felt that there was a really good vibe among the student sections in the north and south ends. And then I believe after the first quarter, Ohio State was already up 21-0. And so I guess just a sense of not even contempt, but just the expectation, because Ohio State came into this top 10 game and you didn't know what kind of Michigan State team you're going to get, because the last few times they've met top 10, Michigan State has held that tilt. And so I'm sure that was maybe on the minds of Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, trying to get those bad tastes out of their mouth, particularly from 2015 and whatnot. So I think just the vibe in the shoe for the last time of the season, it was something that everybody was soaking in, because fans got to come back to the stadium this year for the first time since the pandemic. And so it was definitely a really special feeling. It was a lot warmer than the Purdue game, so that was a little bit of a plus. But really good atmosphere at the shoe.
The fans showed up. They were loud the entire time. And I know it was Senior Day, but I was not expecting the fans to be as loud as they were from as early as they were. And that was a great boost to the players, I'm sure, saying, this is our Senior Day. Let's send the seniors out loud and make sure that we go out with the bang, with the win. But then you have the 100,000 plus fans loud the entire game. That's a great motivator for the players and coaches to just do what we know we can do. And they did it by dominating Michigan State.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it helps that the Buckeyes scored touchdowns on their first 5 or 6 possessions and to go up so big at halftime. And following the senior day trend, Chris Olave getting those 2 touchdowns there early in the first quarter to help him break the record for most receiving touchdowns in a career at Ohio State just added another wrinkle into how special overall the day was for Ohio State, just to knock down a top 10 team, send the seniors out right, break a couple records here and there, and then look forward to the rest of the season.
How do you think Chris Olave will be remembered by Buckeye fans?
Yeah, it's a good question because we got to talk with him post-game as well, and he mentioned how he never thought senior day would come, that it always seemed so far in the future that it wouldn't come, and he would just continue doing his thing, and that's what he did on Saturday. He went out there, caught those 2 touchdowns. He ended up finishing with 140 receiving yards, led all receivers. And, we talked about it post-game. We thought back to his freshman season when he blocked that punt against Michigan and how he got to introduce himself to Buckeye Nation there. And we saw the tweets after he broke David Boston's record, saw him from former teammates, whether they were Paris Campbell, Johnny Dixon, and whatnot, Justin Fields, just talking about how dynamic of a player Chris Olave is. And I know he's a captain this year, and so he means a lot to his teammates, and I'm sure the same goes for the fans. I saw him running down the tunnels after the post games, giving his high fives, tossing his gloves up to the fans. And so he's a fan favorite. He's definitely a team favorite, being a captain and everything. And to have his name at the top of the record books really is where his rightful place belongs.
Yeah, man, it's amazing that he came back for this season. It was a real surprise to many people, probably yourself as well, that he came back to Ohio State for this year. I thought it was also a couple things. One, for his draft stock, but then also, two, he knew how good the next quarterback would be. He never said that, but I don't think he comes back if he doesn't have faith in the next quarterback at Ohio State. And C.J. Stroud continues to get better game after game after game. After a performance like that, you coming up against Michigan this upcoming weekend, he better bring it again because it's the biggest game of the year.
Yeah, it's just really impressive to see his growth from now back to the start of the season, because he really went through some ups and downs there in September particularly, and to know that he had that injured shoulder there, just there were just so much piled up on him. And as you mentioned, for Olave to come back, it just shows the trust that he and the Ohio State wide receiver room, the Ohio State offense had in whoever the next Ohio State starting quarterback was going to be, whether that was Stroud or someone else. But with CJ Stroud, I mean, it's really getting to be very fun to watch the numbers he puts up, because it seems like every week he gets better and better. And to tie, as I mentioned, the single game touchdowns record in the first half, and to see all the rates he was on, I believe after the first quarter, he was on pace to throw for like 900 yards, 12 touchdowns, video game numbers in a sense. And so, you can see almost the confidence that he has when we talk with him after the games and through the week. So as you mentioned, he's going to have to bring it for one more regular season game. He's someone who hasn't experienced the rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State yet, like the sophomores and the freshmen. And so it's interesting to see this mix of youth that we were talking about with the underclassmen and guys like Chris Olave, who have been part of the rivalry, come together for one last regular season game.
How do you think the committee will respond by placing, and where do you think Ohio State will fall in the upcoming rankings that will fall on Tuesday evening?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I know the AP poll has Ohio State ranked at number 2 now, jumping over Alabama. I'm curious if the committee will follow that route, because Ohio State put together a really complete game despite Alabama, winning and doing its thing that really could hold serve. With Oregon now losing, I think they're out of the CFP picture now with 2 losses. It allows Cincinnati to feel a little bit more of a sense of being more secure. They can kind of control their destiny a little bit. As far as Ohio State goes, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if they jump over Alabama to number 2, but I wouldn't. I'm almost expecting them to hold serve at number 3 just to see how the SEC, the rest of their season goes and plays out, because I believe we're headed down the track for a Georgia-Alabama matchup here in the future.
Is that number 3 spot, is that where you would put them, or is that where you think they'll fall, what the committee will do?
I think that's what the committee will do. I would probably say I'd leave Ohio State somewhere in the 2 to 3 range, just because to see the defense go and really shut down a top 10 team. I think if they can do it one more time against the Michigan Wolverines, who are a little bit more different than Michigan State is, just in terms of maybe a little bit more of a completer passing game, maybe not as strong of a running game, but with Haskins and Blake Corum, those 2 guys in the backfield, if they can challenge Ohio State a little bit, the defense is really the most interesting part of Ohio State, because their offense, I mean, they lead the Big Ten in scoring offense by more than 10 points, closest to the second team. So the offense, there really aren't many question marks. The defense, to see if they can make it more consistent, I think is something that will hold serve the rest of the way.
What question do you have about this defense going into the game against Michigan?
Yeah, I think for me, it starts with the secondary. Can you continue to put it together? Because against Michigan State, they allowed just 158 passing yards, which has to be down there in terms of just the lowest they've allowed all season. And so we've seen early on against teams like Oregon and Tulsa where the secondary can allow 300 or 400 passing yards, and that's stuff that gives them trouble later on in the game. It allows opponents to hang around. And so to see the Ohio State secondary just come together there, I kind of want to see them mesh a little bit more with the front seven and the defensive line, because as we know, Haskell Garrett, and then Zach Harrison on the end, Tyreek Smith, who's emerged over the last month returning from injury. Those guys are really holding it down up front, holding down the run, as we mentioned, holding Kenneth Walker, a Heisman hopeful, to less than 30 yards. And so to see maybe a team like Michigan and their quarterback and their receiving game challenge the Ohio State secondary and see what kind of response they have after taking down the Spartans.
As we turn the page, looking ahead to Michigan, what did you hear post-game from either Ryan Day or any of the players that talked post-game about the Michigan game and kind of their mindset going into Saturday's matchup in Ann Arbor?
Absolutely. I know several reporters were curious just what sort of early thoughts Ohio State had. I believe C.J. Stroud just shrugged it off right there because it was the last question he said. He just said something about shrugging it off. And then Ryan Day came up and he said, you know what? The game wasn't even over yet, and I was thinking about this game with Michigan. And so Ohio State's looking forward to it. Chris Olave talked about how he doesn't believe the younger guys who haven't experienced a rivalry yet, he doesn't believe that they're going to come in a little bit nervous. They're going to keep their heads down and do their thing. And so Haskell Garrett, who's also another Ohio State veteran who has played in this game, he said he's excited for it. He's excited for the return of it. He's excited for the challenge. So Ohio State's already looking forward to it. They're already looking ahead. I believe Ryan Day said that Sunday they were going to turn their focus completely to the Wolverines. And as we saw some viral videos, I believe Lloyd McFarquhar and the best damn band in the land, the Ohio State marching band, got together in the Inside Woody, and they're already looking forward to the game that's going to happen this Saturday.
I'm excited for it, man. This is a game that I've been looking forward to for quite a while. I did not expect the Wolverines to play like they have so far this season. So there's a lot of added buzz, a lot of added spice, a lot of added juice that's going to be going into this game. And I know the coaches, not just Ryan Day, but every single coach is going to be locked in. This defense, though, I keep going back to the defense. We know what we can expect from the offense. I'll go back to the offense in a second. But defensively, if Blake Corum is playing, and if Hassan Haskins is who Hassan Haskins is, that's a tough test. Yes, that's playing right into the strength of the Ohio State defense, but you still have to stop them. Jacob, do you think, just from what you've observed all season long, do you think this Ohio State defense can stop the rushing attack of the Wolverines?
Well, it certainly looked like they could do it against Kenneth Walker last week.
True, very true.
With two guys, though, as you mentioned, Michigan has a different offensive dynamic with two capable running backs in Haskins and Corum. And so I'm curious how Jim Harbaugh will mix things up when they do host Ohio State. In terms of just the defensive line that Ohio State boasts, guys like Haskell Garrett and Zach Harrison, Tyreek Smith, they've been around the block. They've played against teams with capable running backs. They had the challenge earlier in the season with Mo Ibrahim in Minnesota. Of course, they brought it along in the season up to this point. And so I think for Ohio State, it's going to be setting the edges, making their presences known. I remember how last year they talked about pressuring the quarterback and hurrying them, but not getting home and, completing the sack and whatnot. And so we've seen their numbers start to uptick a little bit. But if they can make their presences known and maybe cause some pressure in the pocket for Cade McNamara, and, if he does hand the ball off to Corum or Haskins, then they're going to need to count on those linebackers who have really improved as the season's gone along to be there and help them out and provide some defense in the run game.
Linebackers, I was going to go back to the offense, but you mentioned linebackers. I can't go anywhere without talking about Still Chambers. What have you seen from him, his progression? What have you loved from him this season?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Steel Chambers. I've talked with a number of reporters, and it's a common thread that Steel Chambers is one of our favorites to watch on the field because he did cross sides of the ball to be that running back who's now at linebacker. He's got that move to him where he's just flying around on the field. He's flying to the ball and making tackles. He's somewhere near the top 5, top 6 on the team in terms of tackles. He caught an interception against Nebraska just to kind of seal the game there. But Steel Chambers he's got a good personality to him. He's got a good humbleness to him. And to see him fit in after spending his first 2 years of his career on the offense and to make an impact, because when Ohio State's defense is out there, if Steel Chambers is not on the field, there's a little bit more of I believe, a sense of maybe hesitancy when he's not there with the linebackers. I know we've seen what Taraja Mitchell and Tommy Eichenberg and guys like them can do. But with Steel Chambers, I feel like his athleticism is just so valuable that you can't leave him off the field when the defense is on.
No, not at all. Not at all. Bryson Shaw has been a player that has been scrutinized, criticized quite a bit for some things he has done. I reminded somebody recently he's not supposed to be on the field. Josh Proctor hurt himself early in the season, and Bryson Shaw got thrust into a starting role that nobody believes he was ready for when he was thrust into that role. Yeah, he's made bad plays, and I talked about them here on the podcast, but he's played a whole lot better than anybody thought he would right now based off how the circumstances have gone. This is a big week for him because McCarthy and McNamara, whoever's playing quarterback, they realize if we use the play action properly, we can get that young man to come down a couple steps, and then go over the top with him. I'm watching him very closely, Jacob, to see how he performs this weekend against the Wolverines because his role is very, very big for the defense to do exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct because I feel like Denzel Burke and the other corners can hold it down on the sidelines, but having a safety back there deep just to have that next layer in the defense is critical. And I feel like with Bryson Shaw, we talked with him after the Purdue game, and he mentioned how he made some mistakes and that he wants to get those corrected. And so he has been a guy whose season probably has been up and down more so than others on the defense. But I think Ohio State, since making some defensive schematic changes after the Oregon game in particular, I think the emergence of Ronnie Hickman in that bullet role complements Bryson Shaw really well when they drop back for 2 or, just to see Ronnie Hickman, the team leader in tackles. He has a pair of interceptions as well. And so I think they complement each other well. I'd like to see them back there together a little bit more. But with Bryson Shaw in particular, he's a guy who knows that he's been scrutinized, as you mentioned. And so maybe he's got a little bit more of a heightened sense of preparedness going into this Michigan game because, it means more being Michigan, but it means more that people are looking to him to improve.
Absolutely. This offense has been one that pass heavy like crazy. We got a few minutes left with you, Jacob. Yeah, it's pass heavy like they can do whatever they want to. It's really insane to think about how prolific and efficient this pass game has been, but they have not used the running game as much as I expected them to, either Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams, or if you want to get Master Teague into the mix, go right ahead and do it. They haven't done that. Do you think this is the week that they sprinkles in the run a little bit more than he has lately?
It's a good question because it has seemed like we haven't talked too much about Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams as much, despite the fact that they're still back there. But, going up against a Michigan defense that just checking the numbers and stuff like that, they're a top 3 defense in terms of the Big Ten. They hold teams to about 16 points a game and things like that. And so I'm curious, we've seen Travion, he's got the explosiveness to him. Everybody knows that when he carries the rock. And then in Ohio State's passing game, he's shown that he can catch the ball and still create some plays in some space. I think Ohio State obviously has got the chemistry rolling in the passing game. I think with three receivers who are just so dangerous, you have to kind of keep yourself honest and cover them as well. And so maybe that will allow for Ohio State to get guys like Travion Henderson a little bit more of the ball. I mean, Michigan ranks 6th in the Big Ten in terms of rushing yards allowed with 127 a game. And so I'm curious if, as you mentioned, Travion Henderson can get back to, carrying that share of the offense a little bit, but the complementary with the passing game is it's just so electric. And so I think finding that balance might be key, but if Ohio State has to rely on the passing game, so be it, I think, for the Buckeyes.
What's been your favorite part about watching this passing attack throughout the season?
Yeah, it's seeing what guys can do in space.
Mm.
I think last week when Olave broke the touchdown record on that specific pass, there were like 3 or 4 yards between him and the next defender. And then guys like Garrett Wilson who can juke around defenders and just show his like almost acrobatic like skill sets. It's just so fun to watch. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I mean, you feel like he kind of hides there in the slot. Next thing you know, he's breaking records for most receptions in a game. And so they all bring a little bit something different. And it's really fun to see them connect with CJ Stroud, who has had quite an interesting season just in terms of week one to right now. So I think that's been my favorite part. As you mentioned, Steel Chambers is another one. Noah Ruggles was another one, another favorite one to watch. It was a little different to see him miss a field goal against Michigan State. But there are a lot of playmakers, a lot of guys who bring a lot to this offense, and just being where it ranks so high in the country, it's fun to see what they do every week.
Last question for you, a couple of them. One is about a position group. The other is going to be a game prediction for the weekend. I know it's a little bit early, but I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it. Offensive line, though, Jacob, Ajabo and Hutchinson, the defensive ends on either side, they're going to be moving around, slanting, twisting with the defensive tackles to try to create some type of havoc and mess on the offensive line. So the linebackers are free, not so the old lineman cannot get there in the running game. And if there's a blitzing linebacker or safety or somebody in the secondary, there's a free space for them to roam and to quickly get to the quarterback. Are you nervous about the offensive line going up against the defensive front of the Wolverines?
I wouldn't say I'm too nervous. I think it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on them. I know they had a tough test in George Karlaftis of Purdue a few weeks ago and really kept him off the board in terms of production. Lately, over the last few weeks, it seems like Ohio State's offensive line has gotten back into more of a rhythm and they're in sync more. I know there were some issues about some penalty flags called against them when they were false starts or snap infractions, things of that nature. It seems like they've gotten that figured out a little bit. But as you mentioned, Aiden Hutchinson is still a different kind of player than Karlaftis or any other defensive lineman in the country. And so I think the veteran presence that Ohio State's offensive line brings, I think they'll hold down and kind of key into what they've seen over their careers and things like that. It's going to be a terrific matchup, though. Aiden Hutchinson, as you mentioned, he's just a different defensive lineman. So going up against guys like Ohio State's O-lineman, it's just it's going to make for a good matchup there, right there in the trenches.
It will. It will. What's your prediction for the game on Saturday? And if you want to throw in a little score prediction, go right ahead and do that. Who wins? What's the score? All that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm excited for the return of the game. There's going to be a lot of juice in there. And so I'm curious with the Ann Arbor crowd, what kind of things are going to be rocking in the big house. I still think Ohio State gets it done. I think the offense still just will continue to outpace opposing defenses. If I had to lay down a score prediction, maybe I'll go with 35-17. I think Ohio State, they continue to find success in the passing game, maybe mix it up a little bit. The defense will probably get tested against the Michigan team, but that may be to be expected just because of how prolific the Wolverines are. And they've got an electric running game. I think two ball carriers there in Haskins and Corum will present a challenge a little bit. I think Cade McNamara has a little bit more success than Peyton Thorne did from Michigan State. But I still think Ohio State's offense, carries the load for most of the way.
35-17 after back-to-back 50-point performances. The Buckeyes go under that 50-point mark, but they still have a victory, according to what Jacob Benge is predicting. Jacob, thanks for coming on. If you could let everyone know they can catch you on Twitter and where they can read some of your articles leading up to the game on Saturday.
Absolutely, Jay. I appreciate you having me on. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob Benge, like you have down there below. You can find my stories at thelantern.com, the student newspaper at Ohio State. And then you can check me out on the Associated Press. I cover the Ohio State men's basketball game for the AP.
And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jsteven07. Want to thank Jacob for coming on. We'll be with you all week long, getting you ready for the game, reacting to the rankings that come out tonight. And there's a special guest coming up on Friday. You don't want to miss it.